Hi everyone, my name is Mavis Ureke. You would have seen a brief background for me, my professional background. So I'm not really going to share on that. I will get straight to business. Today I'm speaking on emotional resilience. I'm so excited to be part of your growth journey, and I also look forward to learning from all of you going forward. So I am sharing on emotional resilience today, and I thought this was an important topic, especially in such a time as we are now, where we have so much happening. So I'll just give you a brief context in terms of why I talk about emotional resilience. I think the initial thing I'll do is to define, when we talk about emotional resilience, we're obviously talking about emotions, right? So, what is an emotion? So, we understand that emotions, from a biological perspective, they are electrochemical signals that are released from the brain to affect every living cell in your body. So, when something happens, like you have an event or a situation, um, your heart quickly sends a signal to the brain, depending on the meaning you have given to the event, to release an electrochemical signal that matches the emotion you are about to experience. So your emotion is experienced throughout the body after the electrochemical signal has been released throughout your body. And this process of releasing the electrochemical signal really takes about 6 seconds. So in 6 seconds, you can notice a physiological change in someone if they are feeling resentful, if they're feeling annoyed, if they're feeling excited. So an electrochemical signal is released throughout our body, and then our bodies expresses the emotion through a physiological change depending on what that emotion is. So when we experience fear, it is distributed throughout our body. When we experience stress, it is distributed throughout our whole body. So emotions also are pivotal in that emotions drive us daily. So your performance on anything depends on how you feel about it. So emotions drive us. Emotions are the energy that drive us to wake up, or to dread waking up, to perform. So emotions are the energy. Our performance on anything depends on how we feel about it. And I think I always say, we're not really schooled around emotions. We're not taught around emotions, but really our performance on anything depends on how we feel about it. If we don't feel it, we don't do it. So emotions are a pivotal aspect of our lives, even though we've not really been schooled around emotions. But also emotions are not just hoo-ha-ha things that are out there. They are biological, but they also affect not only your brain but your whole body. So your whole organs, all your body is affected by emotions. But also emotions are what builds memories. So without an emotion, you wouldn't be able to remember events in your life. But because of an emotion, whether this thing was hurting or it was exciting, it is because of the emotional experience that you are able to remember things in your life. So now the interesting thing is that all of us have an emotional memory, and the emotional memory, the things we remember, are the things that we use to make as references going forward. So if a situation happens, an event happens to me today, I go back quickly into my memory, and then using that memory, I make meaning of the new situation. And this all depends on whether what I have in my mind, the emotions that I've stored in my mind, have been processed or have been analyzed, so they have been made meaning of. For the majority of people, all we do is store emotions without analyzing them, because we've never really been schooled how to manage our own emotions. So what people tend to do is to use reference points, of sometimes situations that are outdated, or situations that were not analyzed, which means it becomes a compounding effect of maybe unanalyzed data or wrong information based on, I once experienced hurt by somebody. Now I think everybody's out to actually hurt me because I was hurt before. Yet people are different. So when you analyze the emotion, you will then be able to make better meaning, but also create a better reference point going forward, so that you're not stuck in a certain emotion. Now let's look at the context where we are today. We live in times of change. Everything is changing. Jobs are disappearing. We're living in times of uncertainty. We're not sure if we'll have jobs tomorrow. Our jobs are changing titles. critical. Some jobs are really just becoming extinct like dinosaurs. Relationships are becoming difficult. So we're living in times of uncertainty. Look at COVID-19, for example. I know that in Malawi, you are not yet done the lockdown. So we are in week 3, I think, lockdown. In South Africa, I'm in Johannesburg, so staying at home. It's uncertain. There's so many fears. What if we lose our jobs? What if we lose our income? What is going to become of us? So there's so many of those what ifs, and that are triggering a lot of fear. So there's a lot of fear going on. And I would also say, even though you guys are not in lockdown yet, I mean, you're experiencing the news is all over the social media. So you're experiencing all these horrid things about, the COVID-19 and the deaths that are occurring. So you're not immune. You are experiencing the world fear where, through social media or through someone sharing information, you actually are triggered. The challenging thing about emotions is that it doesn't have to happen to you. Your imagination or your memory, remembering something, can trigger you emotionally. So you can think about something in your past and you'll be triggered emotionally, or you can think about something in the future, like a fear in the future can be experienced in the moment. So you don't necessarily have to have gone through any situation to experience an emotion. You can be triggered virtually by imagination or remembering. So we have an innate need for certainty and relatedness and competence and control. So as humans, we've got psychological needs, and those psychological needs, we want to know what's going to happen tomorrow. That's why we get addicted sometimes in, getting to prophets so that they tell us what's going to happen tomorrow. So because we have a psychological need to know what will happen tomorrow. You just have a little bit of, certainty. But in the times we live in, certainty is like very rare. We have to be certain in uncertain times. We have to be predictably unpredictable. So and so we have to find different ways of connecting and relating. Even though we have relatedness is high on our needs, we want to connectedness. So for now, for people that are in lockdown, if work was where you connected, you're locked down, you're on your own, you're alone and you're isolated, and that is threatening, right? So psychologically, when your psychological needs are not met, you experience that psychological threat, and you can begin to experience emotional meltdown, mental meltdown, or even behavioral meltdown. When you feel threatened, when we feel afraid, the things that we do and say are shocking because we get into the survival mode, the fight or flight syndrome. So we get, these changes that are happening, they challenge us emotionally, they challenge our identity, they also challenge our own self-worth and dignity, right? So we are experiencing these challenging times, and due to the survival responses and the psychological threats, you find that a lot of people are in a cycle of fear, cycle of anxiety. Some are even, in a cycle of apathy, preventing them to actually adapt, innovate, and create so that they can manage the situation that they are in. So when we're not able to decode fear, when we're not able to, to be able to read fear for what it is, but also be able to place it exactly where it is. What is your fear about? When you're unable to decode it, it is difficult to actually harness it so that you can manage it, so that you can begin to, to be productive. So emotions, negative or positive, no emotion is bad. So emotions are all good. They are, in fact, they are not good or bad. They are only negatively charged or positively charged. And what happens is your ability to manage those emotions or make use of them will determine whether the emotion becomes a bad thing. Because what is bad is the behavior. What do you do with the emotion is what is bad, not the emotion itself. So what happens when we experience cycles of fear and anxiety? Fear limits our problem-solving ability. So when you experience a lot of fear, blood flows from the reasoning, from the cognitive, from the problem-solving part of the brain to the survival center, to your fear center. And then you are no longer able to actually manage, the challenges that you're experiencing. Stress levels then go up, energy crisis, you experience an energy crisis, you're less productive, conflict increases, you work long hours, but you actually don't see what you're actually producing. If you're also a leader or you're someone who's responsible for someone, so leader doesn't necessarily mean position, it just means you I mean, you are in a position of influence. So what does that mean? You can be a mom, you can be a wife. The moment you are responsible for more than one person, you also experience what is known as power stress. Okay, you experience what is known as power stress. So compounded with the fears, everyday fears, plus power stress, and then you have the energy crisis going on in your body. What happens if you don't manage the emotions? You experience emotional fatigue. So if you don't manage the emotions in real time, they continue to build up in intensity. You experience emotional fatigue. And then what happens with that is that you experience a deterioration of the central nervous system and your performance decreases, right? And then there's depletion of energy reserves. And you also experience what is known as morphological changes. So your whole body changes because when you feel the stress, when you feel the anxiety, you're experiencing high levels of cortisol and adrenaline. And with these said is that, your body begins to change. Your own body begins to change when you have an overproduction of cortisol or adrenaline in your body. So a lot of people, instead of managing emotions, they repress emotions, they suppress emotions, or they're actually just overly volatile. People who are always moaning and complaining, everything is always going not right with them. So the key thing is that we should not either repress, suppress, or become volatile. We need to manage emotions. So how else we avoid emotions is we take a lot of action. So we begin to just do things so that we avoid looking at ourselves. We avoid taking that inward journey, so we can begin to look at our own emotional journey, but our own emotional memory, so that we're able to process it, so that we have that level of identity that accommodates all of who we are. We're not denying any part of ourselves or any part of our journey. We are in touch with who we are, all our pain, our sorrows, but also all our joys. Okay, so when the emotions are not managed, also you begin to see people experiencing passive aggressive behaviors and presentisms at work. So they are there, but they're not there. There's no connection, disengagement. People are not really engaged with the work because remember, the heart is key. When you do, people will say, always do it from their heart. When people do it from their heart, there's that emotional connection, there's that commitment, and you do work very, very well. You all know that when we do work from the heart, we do great work. So, but when we are not managing emotions, our heart, when we're becoming protective, when we have fears, we're protecting ourselves. We're not really engaging our hearts in the things that we should be engaging our hearts in. Okay. So what also happens is that repression, when you're not managing emotions, when you're repressing emotions, it causes depression, it causes stress, it causes cancer, it causes hypertension, it causes diabetes. So all the reasons why we need to manage emotions. The risks of us not managing emotions are too great. So we cannot not manage emotions. In fact, we need to make sure that we build our capacity to manage emotions. So all this said, we really need to manage our own emotions to increase productivity, to increase well-being, and to improve our relationships. Remember, we're social animals. So even though we struggle in relationships, we still want to be connected, right? We still want relationships. They're important to us as human beings. So very important. How do we manage emotions so that we improve productivity, well-being, and our relationships? So we don't only need to manage emotions in the moment, we also need to manage emotions and build emotional energy reserves for when it is needed. So I was you're looking at, this COVID-19 situation where, people will say, if you had a pre-existing condition, if you had a pre-existing ailment, you're highly at risk. So if you had diabetes, if you had cancer, if you had hypertension, if you get COVID, you're highly at risk. Why? Because you've had pre-existing health condition. And I was also thinking to say, if you do not have emotional energy reserves and you go through a stressful situation, which means if you had stress before a situation that is stressful happens, you have a double bind. It's a compounding effect. It increases. So if you had an existing emotional situation, if you had an existing unprocessed emotion, an existing emotional condition, you had stress, you had anger issues, you had fear and panic attacks, and then a situation that is stressful also happens, that does is that it only increases. It only makes you more volatile. if that makes sense. It only makes you more volatile. So what we need to do, we need to build resilience. You're not managing emotions for now. Manage emotions for when situations that demand emotional energy, arise. You're able to say, I'm here. I'm ready for this. I can deal with this, right? Because you have the emotional capacity and you've got psychological space to be able to manage. So in times such as this, we're looking for leaders that can, give people direction, that can be decisive, that can, continue to believe in the vision, even though things are challenging. But this requires energy and this requires psychological space. Otherwise, if you don't have, you're panicking like everybody else. So you're panicking like everybody else, causing more anxiety, more panic, because you're in a position of leadership. So imagine leading from fear rather than leading from a place of, integrity and a place of my, built up identity. So I know who I am as a leader. Yes, I experience the fear. Yes, I can see what is going on, but I'm able to process the fear and analyze the fear so that I make meaning that keeps us going forward. Because in panic, people get stagnate. In panic, people regress. And so leaders then need the power to move people forward emotionally, right? To move people forward emotionally. So resilience is the ability to bounce back, but also the ability to thrive. Okay, so not only survive shocks and emotional challenging situation, but also be able to thrive going forward, right? Okay, so the resilient people, they resist shocks and stay the same. So if you're resilient, if you had built up emotional reserves and energy, when challenging times come, you go through them and people are like, oh, you're strong. How did you come out? Because you had emotional reserves. So you'd resist the shocks, okay? Or you become anti-fragile. So the anti-fragile gets better. So the anti-fragile, when things get tough, the tough get going. You've heard that one, right? So I like to talk about the sea creature in Greece called the Hydra. So there's this sea monster called the Hydras, and it's got horns all over. But when you actually cut the horn of a Hydra, 2 horns grow. So you cut one horn, 2 horns grow. That's how anti-fragile, that's how it kicks back. So in challenging times, have we built ourselves emotionally that when challenges come, we use them as bouncing boards to move forward rather than it cracking us and destroying it. And this is why we need to build emotional resilience. And I know that in this video, I have not really talked about how to do that. How do you manage emotions? How do you build emotional resilience? I've just given you context to say what happens and why we need to build resilience. So hopefully in my next video, I can do the how-tos and the techniques. And so for this video, give me comments. Was this useful? What would you like to learn more about? But also connect with me on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, let's connect. So I am on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Let's share each other up. If you're on LinkedIn and you do also post, you want my support there, let's build each other up as women and support each other. I also do Facebook Live. So I do once a week Facebook Live. And I think for this week, it'll be on Thursday. So I've got a page called Emotions for Success. So you can join me there as well, where I do Facebook Live for emotional resilience. So going through this period, I'm going to be sharing on emotional resilience at least once a week. So you can also connect with me there. And thank you. And I look forward to learn from you. And I hope this was useful. Feedback, we'll be chatting at 7. Any questions we can clarify or input. So you can also give me what your thoughts, your input, your experiences are, so that we can learn from each other. Look forward to that. Thank you. Have a great day.